The hour is late. I know Kitisa is a long parsha, and I am going to ask for a few minutes of your time. There's some words that I would like to share before Adam comes up and does Musaf. The Torah portion includes a particular moment. Vayihi kasher karava machaneh. Moshe hears from God what is going on. He's up on the mountain, hears from God what is going on down amongst the people, and Vayar et Egel, he's already asked God to forgive, and then he heads down there and he sees the calf, Umecholot, and the dancing. Vayichar af Moshe, he gets very angry. Vayashlech miyadav et haluchot, he hurls the tablets from his hands. Vayishaber otam, shatters them tachat hahar, at the foot of the mountain. There are three ways, at least, but three that I'm going to share with you this morning, that the tradition understands that moment. The first is that Moshe was angry, and the text says, Vayichar af Moshe, Moshe was angry, and he hurls the tablets from his hands. You can almost feel the adrenaline when you get that angry, that you just act impulsively and throw the tablets from your hands out of anger at what you are seeing. The Rashbam offers a different interpretation. He says that when Moses saw the golden calf, he became physically too weak to carry the weight of the tablets. So you can almost imagine not being filled with adrenaline, but maybe out of the shock, maybe shaking, being and just feeling their heaviness. The rabbis actually say that the first tablets were made with the finger of God, and that the letters carried the tablets. Right? And that the letters flew away, and then they were heavy stone. And Rashbam says that he threw them as far away from himself so that he wouldn't drop them on his feet. Right? A very different vision than Moshe being filled with rage and strength and throwing them over his head, not Charlton Heston. The last explanation I share with you from Avot Rabbi Natan really has this being a considered moment. That Moshe gets angry, but then he says, how can I give these tablets to Israel and bind them in serious commandments and cause them to deserve death? For it is written, one who sacrifices to any gods other than the eternal alone will be put to death. And so instead, I will take hold of them and I will smash them and I will return the people to good standing. Very, very different story. Moshe may have felt anger, but then makes a considered decision. One of the things that the rabbis say that Moshe actually improvised, and that God afterwards said, no, that was very good. It was good what you did. But Moshe took it upon himself to say, if I hand these people the tablets are the agreement. They are the contract between God and the Jewish people. And in these tablets, it says, don't sacrifice to any other gods. And if I do that at this moment, then the people are going to suffer greatly. And Moshe chooses to sacrifice the tablets for the sake of the people. There's a wonderful book called Becoming Elijah, written by Professor Daniel Matt, who is the world's leading scholar in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah, oversaw the translation and commentary of the Zohar. And in this book, he points out something that the rabbis figured out a long time ago, which is that if you read the stories carefully, the story of Moses and Elijah, they're the same person. I'll read you a little bit. The rabbis said, you find that Moses and Elijah are equivalent in everything. Both of them are called Ish HaElohim. At Mount Sinai, Moses went up to God while Elijah went up in a whirlwind to heaven. Moses fled Pharaoh after killing an Egyptian, and Elijah fled Jezebel after killing the prophets of Baal. Moses, with God's help, parted the Red Sea. with an outstretched arm so that Israel could cross on dry ground. And Elijah parted the Jordan so that he and Elisha could cross on dry ground. They are both known as being Kanim. They are zealots for God, with Moses ordering in this week's Parsha the Levites to kill many of the Israelites who worship the golden calf, and Elijah slaughtering the prophets of Baal in the Haftarah just after the Haftarah that Artie just read. And there are more and more parallels. The Mishnah brings out 30 of them, but there's one great difference between Moses and Elijah. Because there's a moment when Elijah is at Mount Sinai, just like Moses is. We know it. There is God's not in the earthquake, not in anything else, but is in the kol dmama daka, the still small voice. And I'm just going to read you from the book of Kings what happens in that moment. Elijah hears the still small voice, wrapped his mantle about his face, went out and stood at the entrance of the cave, and a voice addressed him. God says to him and says, "Why are you here, Elijah?" And Elijah says, "I am moved by zeal for the Lord, the God of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are about to take my life." They're out to take my life. Elijah is saying, they're after me. They hate me. They're horrible. They're terrible. And do you know what God does in that moment? The Lord said to him, "Go back. Go back, and on your way back, you're going to see a guy named Elisha, and he's going to succeed you." God fires him because Elijah has fundamentally misunderstood what it means to be a prophet. The sages will say in the Zohar later on, and Artie has heard this from me many times before, Elijah appears at a bris, at every bris, and God told him, "You're going to stay alive forever. You're going to appear at every bris because you're going to see that the Jewish people are still keeping your covenant. You didn't believe in them." And the job of a prophet, yes, is to yell and scream at the Jewish people when they're messing up and they're doing wrong. But when you come to me, God says, your job is to defend them. Look at what Moses did. I got angry, and Moses said, "You can forgive the people, great, and if not, erase me from your book too." There's no me without them. Last Shabbat, we celebrated the 13th year of our partnership as Rabbi and community, and of the beautiful community that we've continued to build. And yet that celebration took place during what is a difficult time. Terrible war rages, a war whose most significant casualties are Jews and Muslims in Israel and Gaza, but a war which has also taken a toll upon us locally and upon our Bethel community. Some people believe that Israel was attacked and is fighting a just and defensive war, that it is doing everything possible to prevent civilian casualties, that only continued military pressure will free the hostages, and that it has to continue to fight until Hamas leaders are forced into exile. And others believe that the sheer number of civilian casualties in Gaza is too high, that the damage Israel has inflicted is too much and too wanton, that Israel must declare a ceasefire immediately, that only a ceasefire will move negotiations forward to free the hostages, and that Israel's response to October 7th has been over the top, and that members of the current government are immoral extremists intent on resettling Gaza, and that Netanyahu is only continuing the war to protect his grip on power. And we believe these things, and not only that, but we believe that the people who we disagree with are not just mistaken, but they're wrong. They're wrong. And we ask ourselves, how can we be part of a community, of a synagogue, with people who believe things that I believe are fundamentally wrong? Some of you may even be asking yourself about me as a rabbi. If my moral compass is so off, what does it mean for me to be a rabbi? When faced with the choice between staying with God and starting over, or being with the people, that terrible and sinning and wrong people who had just built a golden calf, Moses says to God, you forgive them, great, but if not, erase me from your book. When faced with the choice of holding on to the 10 Commandments, written by the finger of God, but knowing that they're going to condemn the people, and the people are worthy of condemnation, or casting them down, but by casting down the tablets, casting his lot with those terrible Israelites, Moses throws down the tablets. Not because he's angry, and not because just that they're too heavy and he doesn't want to hurt his feet. He throws them down out of love. Out of love of a flawed and sinful, wrong people. My deepest hope and prayer is that we can find that love for each other, despite and perhaps especially during this time. There are so few places in the modern world where we meet people, much less engage with people with whom we actually disagree. There are much fewer places where we love and celebrate with those people with whom we disagree in times of joy, and where we reach out and care for each other in times of sorrow. This war has had many casualties. Let us not let our community be another one. Shabbat Shalom. Please rise. The Chatzi Kaddish before Musa.